Hey guys, what's going on? It's Space Cowboy here. Welcome back to the channel with another video for you guys here today, and we are reacting to some more media content, and this was actually a video I was planning on doing besides reacting to this type of content, and ESPN did the job for me. So there was a debate by Stephen A. Smith, Marcus Spears, and Keyshawn Johnson about the most disappointing Cowboys season in recent memory. Now, I'm going to talk about my personal disappointing season in recent memory, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But before we do, if you can hit the like button, that'd be greatly appreciated. Subscribe if you're new, and hit that notification bell so you can continue to get that type of content in your sub box moving forward. So we're going to listen into what they had to say, what all three had to say about which season is the most disappointing in recent memory, and I want to see how far they go back and kind of use it as the measuring stick to where I think I was most disappointed given the expectations going into the year and how the year went and ultimately where we went. So let's listen to what they have to say, and then we'll further discuss.
Pollard all of a sudden seemed like he had taken over the backfield. We know what Michael Parsons is. Diggs seemed like he was starting to play more solid and sound. They could potentially lose Dan Quinn. If they lose Dan Quinn, now what? Now what you going to do on the defensive side of the ball? Dak Prescott doesn't have but one more year guaranteed money before they got to make a decision on what to do with him or draft a guy. So I would think in a long period of time, it probably is the most disappointing, considering how they started off the season. Dak Prescott gets hurt. Cooper Rush comes in and kind of runs the table, has one loss there. Dak Prescott comes back. He wins a couple games before they have a little losing streak. And then all of a sudden they kind of go on a bad little interception run. But in the end, they still was in contention for the #1 seed. They scoreboard watching, and then all of a sudden they lay an egg against the Washington Commanders, and then they roll into San Francisco after beating down the Bucs. And Dak Prescott basically throws 2 interceptions. The offense doesn't do much, and they put up 12 stinking points. It's got to be the most disappointing Cowboys season in recent memory. I can't think of another one.
Well,
Can't think of another one.
I can.
T, you feel
I didn't
right
ask
into
you.
it.
She asked
You
me.
feel right into it, man.
I can't.
God.
I can't.
Golly.
Number one, we could point to last year where they didn't even win one playoff game. That would be interesting. But you know what my favorite is? And I say my favorite because while it's obviously disappointing for Cowboy fans, it's not disappointing for me. It's just me. It's just a matter of taste. 2013. Ladies and gentlemen, in 2011 and 2012, the Dallas Cowboys played with the NFC East Division crown on the line. No wild card was going to come from the division. They had to win the division to make the playoffs, and they lost back-to-back once. And then they came to the third year.
I knew it. The Carson Wentz.
Once again,
I knew it.
with a division crown on the line. And for the third consecutive year, the last game of the season, with the division crown on the line and a playoff berth on the line, they lost it again. And I can't think of anything. I can't think of any greater moment that I have had watching the Cowboys than those three back-to-back years, last game of the regular season,
Man,
division crown on the line, and they lost. And then not only did they lose, they lost to each team in the division all 3 years. It wasn't like they couldn't get over the hump of that one team. No, the Washington team beat them one year. The Giants beat them another year. The Eagles beat them another year. They lost all 3 teams in their division, got a piece of them in that 3-year period. That, to me, stands out above the crowd.
You sickening.
It's
You are
true.
The ability for you to wallow in happiness and people's sorrow is ridiculous. bro.
Only Cowboy fans. Only Cowboy
Yeah,
fans.
but
Nothing else
it's
in life.
still bad.
I'm not way with nothing else in life. I really am not.
You
Just
make
them.
You make a good point with that one, S.A., but I'll go back, and I'm not sure of the year. I don't have the year, but I was a part of a 13-3 season where we had a first-round bye and we lost to Minnesota with Brett Favre.
Oh, that would be 2007.
2007.
That would
He
be
got
2007.
all of it written down, Swaggle.
No, I know
He
that.
got it
No.
all written down with a pen.
No, I got it written down. No, I got it in my iPad right here. I'm not pretending that I don't. I'm saying he
Like
said he
a
couldn't recall
psycho.
the year,
Yeah,
so I
like
wanted
a
to let him
psycho,
know
man.
which year it
Yeah.
was.
And this makes me laugh so much at the media, and this is why I can't take them seriously, because if you want to have a discussion on a disappointing Cowboys season, I mean, look no further than myself, because me not seeing any championship glory from the Dallas Cowboys, and all I know is disappointment, I can pinpoint the season that I felt was most disappointing, but they all bring up different seasons, and I'm going to go over them bit by bit. So Keyshawn Johnson brings up this year. Here's the thing. This year, no one expected the Cowboys to do anything once Dak Prescott got hurt. No one expected the Cowboys to win the Super Bowl, but ESPN wanted to push that narrative and other networks. And we talked about that when we talked about Joey Taylor, when we talked about, Shady McCoy and how they were talking about the Cowboys. They were trying to pump them up and be like, oh, they're a Super Bowl contender. They should win the Super Bowl. There's no excuse. So when they lose, ultimately, when they're the team that, honest to God, like, I said they weren't going to win the Super Bowl. And I was right, and I hate being right on that, but you have these discussions, and it's like you have to pump up the Cowboys because then you can be like, see, they failed. They disappointed X, Y, and Z. But this year, the Cowboys didn't disappoint. They just met expectations. They were a team that was a 10 to 12 win team, to say the least. They went through a slew of injuries. They managed to keep the ship upright. And for the reasons we've talked about all throughout last season, they failed. They failed to win 2 playoff games. They did very well in Tampa. They lost in San Francisco in a close game. And people want to act like this Cowboys team was going to win the Super Bowl. I personally think that if they had gotten back, past Philadelphia, it would have been an interesting matchup. I don't know if they get past Philadelphia, but I mean, are we seriously going to say that this year is the most? No, it's not, because no one expected the Cowboys to do anything this season with how they constructed their roster. Then Stephen A. Smith, being the idiot he is, he's just going for the clicks and views. And in space, you keep talking about, well, no, hey, you know what? If it gets, if we want to do this symbiotic relationship of you want to talk about my team, I will talk about you talking about my team. So you know what? Thank you, Stephen A. Smith, for putting out content for myself. The big thing is like you bring up 2011 through 2013, but people fail to understand that the Dallas Cowboys were never considered contenders in that span of time. You cannot tell me between the years 2011 and 2013 you seriously thought the Cowboys were going to do anything. They were a rebuilding team that fell apart after the 2010 season because the season, prior to 2009 going into 2010, the roster was old on the offensive line. They needed to rebuild properly, and that's what the Cowboys did for a couple seasons, and then we saw what happened in 2014. But I think it's stupid. Oh, well, it's disappointing because they lost. No, disappointing means you expected the team to do one thing, and they did the complete opposite. And I'll provide you an example. I don't think that this is disappointing. I think that this is more so, this is my most disappointing season, but 2019 is a prime example. The Dallas Cowboys were loaded on offense on paper. They had the best, one of the best offensive lines in football. They had all the weapons. They got Randall Cobb. They had Michael Gallup. They had Amari Cooper. They had Zeke. They just drafted Tony Pollard. The defense, they added Robert Quinn, and this was after the 2018 season. So everyone thought that this team was ready to take the next step, and they went 8-8, and they lost. That was a disappointing season. You should have won the division that year, and you could not go 9-7, which would have won you the NFC East. And you got your coach fired. That's a disappointing season, 110%. Because people were talking highly about the Cowboys in 2019. Now, if we're talking about the correct answer, in my point of view, it's the 2007 Dallas Cowboys, as Marcus Spears was speaking about. And, he got the opponent confused. They did play the Giants in the first round. We never had a first-round bye against the Vikings. That was, we played them in 2009, but we had to face Philadelphia in the wild card round. The 2007 Cowboys were the most disappointing Cowboys team in recent memory. I know it's a very long time ago, but we kind of have to look in retrospect, and I'll give you my context here. So, 2007, you set the record for most Pro Bowlers on a singular team, which was tied by the Baltimore Ravens in 2019. It took that long for another team to get that many Pro Bowlers. you couldn't win one playoff game. And whether they would have beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl, I feel like if they had beaten the Giants, they most definitely would have beaten the Packers in the next round, and they would have been in that Super Bowl. If they would have won it, that is yet to be determined. I think they would have won a rematch against the Patriots, but I could be wrong. But that was a disappointing year because of how amazing that team was loaded on both sides of the ball. And it came together. They just couldn't close the deal. That's disappointing. People like to bring up 2009. 2009 was a year where people thought the Cowboys were like the hottest team in the league going into the postseason because of how they played, but like people thought they were going to collapse down the stretch like they did in 2008 the previous year. They went 11-5. They beat the Eagles as they should have. And people thought they were going to beat the Vikings. And yeah, there was a disappointment there, but like I think they were going to lose to the Vikings, but not in the fashion they did. And that's why I'm still traumatized by 2009. But all joking aside, now people bring up 2014. No one thought the Cowboys were going to be good in 2014. And then when the playoffs came, no one thought they were going to beat the Packers. There were some people like, maybe they'll beat the Packers. But there's that, and they lost to the Packers in disappointing fashion that way. And you'd be like, well, Space, aren't you saying that's a disappointing season? No, it's not a disappointing season because a disappointing season, once again, is a culmination of the expectations going into that year and then the results of what happened in that year. You can't tell me that if you had Stephen A. Smith picking the Cowboys to miss the postseason at 6-10 in 2014 and then laugh at how they ended in disappointing fashion. Oh, that was a disappointing season. No, because if you think one team's going to do something and they do better than what they were expected, regardless of what the end result is, that's not a disappointing season. And that's in my opinion. 2016, I think the Cowboys, given that defense, offensively, they ran the ball so damn well with Zeke. And I mean, realistically, when you look back at that team, they could have made it to the Super Bowl that year, but they just got a bad matchup and their defense couldn't make a stop when they needed to. When you give up 21 points immediately, like that's not good. So there's that. 2018, no one expected the Cowboys to do really much that year. In 2021, I think people expected the Cowboys to win the NFC East. But given how the rest of the playoffs unfolded, I think a lot of people were just picking the Cowboys to win one play. And in fact, people weren't picking the Cowboys to win against the 49ers. So it's not really disappointing if you think, if you were a person in the media and these are the same people that think that the Cowboys were going to lose to the 49ers in 2021 and this year, why the hell are you saying it's a disappointing year? Like, this is why I hate the media, and I'm glad I'm talking about them so that we can, again, have the symbiotic relationship. If you want to talk about my team, I will talk about you talking about my team, and we will get everybody in conversation. To me, 2007 is the most disappointing Cowboys season to this point in time, and no other team matches. 2014, that doesn't match. 2007 was a year many people looked at the Cowboys as a legitimate team going into that year, and you looked at what they had. They did amazing in the regular season, one of the best Cowboys teams ever assembled, and arguably if they had won a championship, they would have been the best Cowboys team of all time. There is no discussion. That's how talented that team was. And they blew it. So 2007 is the answer for me, and I'm curious to hear your answers. Put that down below. But with that being said, guys, I do hope you enjoyed this video. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a good one. Goodbye.